Welcome to our ungathered gathering at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Stockton. We're glad you are with us and hope you will find here what you are seeking. We are a community of individuals holding many different beliefs, coming from many different places, and each progressing on our own journeys of life and faith. We join together in our commitment to care for humanity and to shape a better, healthier, more hopeful world. We promise to accept and encourage all those persons of goodwill who gather here, recognizing that we all continue to grow and learn throughout our lifetimes. We especially welcome and stand with LGBTQ persons, even as we seek to welcome all persons of every age, ability, status, and shade of skin. We strive to make our community a place of peace and acceptance, love and nurture, even as we challenge ourselves and others to live more faithfully according to the values of Unitarian Universalism. Listen now for our prelude.
Opening words, troubled times. These are troubled times in which we live today. Democracy's all twisted up with capitalism and white power. Justice is regularly adjusted for wealth, power, and race. Police and guardsmen and agents all gather to keep peace. But it is peace without justice or compassion. It is order without the freedom to speak for many. Normal means black, brown, and red people are not welcome. Getting back to normal means segregation of people and ideas. Self-determination is fine, as long as those others stay on the reservation, in their ghettos, away from us fine white folks. Yes, we just need to get back to normal in these troubled times. Chalice lighting. We light our chalices in this ungathered gathering to remind us that we are still connected to each other, to all people, and to all of life. For in our connection, there is hope that things will get better, that this time the world really will change, and justice and compassion will prevail.
Building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way.
When we are able to gather, we take this time to greet one another after our first hymn. Then we share these words of affirmation.
Please join us in the words of affirmation.
We believe in love.
Love is the only doctrine of this church.
We believe in truth.
The quest for truth is our sacrament,
We believe in helping others.
and service is our prayer.
We believe in the sacredness of life.
To dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, serve humanity and fellowship, and cherish the earth and its creatures. This do we covenant, each with the other. The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson, illustrated by Rafael Lopez. For Cia Nell and Josie, from Jacqueline Woodson. To Santiago, Moon Whisperer, from Rafael Lopez. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. Maybe it will be your skin, your clothes, or the curl of your hair. There will be times when no one understands the way words curl from your mouth, the beautiful language of the country you left behind. My name is Rigoberto. We just moved here from Venezuela. And because they don't understand, the classroom will fill with laughter until the teacher quiets everyone. Rigoberto from Venezuela, your teacher says, so soft and beautifully that your name and homeland sound like flowers blooming, the first bright notes of a song. There will be times when the words don't come. Your own voice, once huge, now smaller. When the teacher asks, "What did you do last summer? Tell the class your story." "We went to France," Chayla says. "These shells come from a beach in Maine." A boy named Jonathan holds out a jar filled with tiny shells so fragile they look like they'll turn to dust in your own untraveled hands. "My whole family went to India, Spain, South Carolina." Each souvenir a small triumph of a journey, the travels going on and on. And as you stand in front of that room, you can only remember how the heat waved as it lifted off the curb, and your day spent at home caring for your little sister, who made you laugh out loud and hugged you hard at nap time. You can only remember the books you kept on reading long after she had fallen to sleep. And in that room where no one else is quite like you, you looked down at your own empty hands and wondered, what good is this when other students were flying and sailing and going somewhere? There will be times when the lunch your mother packed for you is too strange or too unfamiliar for others to love as you do. When even your own friend Nadia will wrinkle her nose and say, "What's in there anyway?" And you'll wonder how she doesn't see the rice beneath the meat and kimchi. You'll wonder why she doesn't remember that rice is the most popular food in the world. There will be times when the climbing bars are too high, the run is too fast and far, the game isn't one you can ever really play. "I don't want him on our team. You can watch." "Well, maybe you can have a turn later." There will be times when the world feels like a place that you're standing all the way outside of. And all that stands beside you is your own brave self, steady as steel and ready, even though you don't yet know what you're ready for. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you until the day you begin to share your stories. "My name is Angelina, and I spent my whole summer with my little sister," you tell the class. your voice stronger than it was a minute ago. Reading books and telling stories, and even though we were right on our block, it was like we got to go everywhere. Your name is like my sister's, Rigoberto says. Her name is Angelina too. And all at once, in the room where no one else is quite like you, the world opens itself up a little wider to make some space for you. This is the day you begin to find the places inside, your laughter and your lunches, your books, your travel and your stories, where every new friend has something a little like you and something else so fabulously not quite like you at all.
At this time in our service, we share milestones in our lives by lighting candles of joy and concern. I didn't get the reports of milestones this week. I would ask that we keep all those people who are struggling with the death of George Floyd in our thoughts and hearts, in the hopes that racism may soon be overcome. Also Breonna Taylor and so many others that have died unjustly. I light a candle for them. I light another candle for those people that are celebrating birthdays and anniversaries and sharing times of joy. And then I light another candle for all those things that cannot yet be spoken, but weigh heavily in our thoughts and our hearts. And one more for those struggling with the quarantine and COVID-19. I invite us into a time of silent thought, prayer, and meditation. From our own separate places, wherever we may be this day, we take time to gather together, at least as much as we may, through this virtual service. We think of those who are struggling at this time, those who have faced difficulties, those who are recovering from surgeries, those who are struggling with aging, those who are struggling with COVID-19. We think also of those who are celebrating birthdays and anniversaries and graduations and other transitions that we aren't able to celebrate together due to the quarantine. We send good energy to all those people that this congregation touches. We find strength in being together. We find support in knowing that we are always there for each other, able to listen, ready to accept, willing to learn. For all these things, for this congregation, we give thanks this day. I invite you now to sing along to our meditation song, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion.
Responsive reading number 464. And then all that has divided us will merge. And then compassion will be wedded to power. And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle. And then both women and men will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and free and varied. And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. Then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again.
At this time, we usually share our pledges, gifts, and offerings, and I would invite anyone who would like to send in a pledge or a gift or an offering to do so to our church office, 2737 Pacific Avenue, Stockton, California, 95204. Thank you. Congregational democracy and our troubled world. In most ordinary years, I try to address matters of congregational democracy on the day of our annual congregational meeting, which led me to the first half of the sermon title. Between COVID-19 and the demonstrations about George Floyd's murder under cover of white police power in Minneapolis, I felt it necessary to add the second half of the sermon title. I actually thought about doing two separate sermons, but decided that the idea of democracy does tie all the pieces together reasonably well. Now, the reason I regularly address congregational democracy is that in Unitarian Universalism, we make decisions a bit differently than in many churches. We practice a congregational polity in which the congregation makes all the important decisions about its practices, its statements of faith, its choice of a minister and other staff, and about church buildings, among other matters. Now, other churches may be ordered to do things a certain way by the Pope, bishops, the diocese, presbyteries, or conferences, while we choose to voluntarily associate with the Unitarian Association, even though we are making our own decisions. Now, this sounds much simpler than it really is, but the important idea is that we vote on anything important and authorize our elected Board of Trustees to make other decisions between congregational meetings. This is the day that our congregation has been called to meet. Even though many other UU congregations have waived part of their bylaws to meet over Zoom, we will be attempting to have an actual meeting this noon. As a small congregation, we don't need that many people to show up to satisfy the quorum requirement, and there are provisions for the board to handle things if we don't get a quorum, at least until we are able to hold an in-person meeting. One of the things we need to do when we meet in person is to amend the bylaws to allow a Zoom meeting when it's not safe to meet in person. We'll soon see who shows up and what happens today. The main matters of business are to pass the budget for the coming year and elect the new class of trustees and a few others. The board can fill those vacancies and amend the budget as needed, so things will work out whether we have a quorum or not, and amending the bylaws can wait a while. That covers most of what I would usually say about the meeting, other than to remind and encourage people to be respectful of different perspectives and to give others a chance to share their truth. Nothing on the agenda for this meeting appears likely to be contentious, so it should be quick, and if we don't have a quorum, the board can handle it at its first meeting in July. You practice a version of direct democracy which works fairly well most of the time. Now the harder part of the sermon, that representative democracy practiced in our nation. Choosing representatives who are expected to represent well over 300 million people in national offices and up to several million people even in state and local elections is an interesting process with outcomes that often please few of the voters. Even as early as when the U.S. Constitution was written and passed, white male landowners held most of the power. Slaves did not count as full persons. Women and blacks and indigenous peoples were not given a vote and were excluded from decision-making for more than the first century of U.S. history. Later amendments offered those groups citizenship and a vote, but many patterns of decision-making still continue to favor the wealthy. Though democracy remains a noble idea, its practice nationally and locally has many flaws, and equality, justice, and freedom are too often elusive realities. When people suffer the effects of racism today, it is often excused as the work of one or a few bad actors, rather than the systemic reality that it remains. Many of us hoped and even believed that the civil rights movement had changed America so that black men and brown men and red men would have the same opportunities and the same respect as white men, with women of color at least better matched to their white counterparts. Over the last half century, some of the worst hate crimes have been perpetrated against gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender persons, especially black trans women, who have been murdered all over the supposedly civilized world merely for existing. The realities of black men imprisoned for crimes that at most get whites a slap on the wrist are fairly well known, but those truths, as well as other inconvenient truths that don't fit the dominant narrative of our supposedly progressive society, tend to get little mention in the media or even in campaign rhetoric. The death of George Floyd under the knee of a white Minneapolis police officer, assisted by 3 other officers, would be unacceptable under virtually any circumstances, but so much more so in a progressive city, in a progressive state, while only accused of a minor crime. That this happened a mile or so from where my grandmother lived most of her life and where my mother was born brought it closer to home for me, but it can never be justified and should never be accepted. The era of actual lynching might have passed, but how many black men and other persons of color will we allow to be murdered by police and vigilantes and others in this country while we try to argue that this is not and has not been the systemic practice of whites in power throughout the history of our nation? I don't like the term white supremacy, nor do I like the term racist, but I have long since accepted that I have benefited from white male privilege all my life. But there have been too many deaths at the hands of white police keeping order in cities run by whites in states and a nation where white males have held almost all the power since the land was stolen from indigenous peoples. Among the nations of the world, we have long held ourselves above the other nations as a free democracy, a land of opportunity, a chosen people, a protector of democracy and justice, a special and blessed people. Though our history may be shorter than that of many nations, we carry not only the blood of slaves and indigenous peoples, but also that of free men and women of color who dared to challenge the establishment, who ventured into areas where they were not welcome. We may proclaim our actions to be in line with our highest values of justice and compassion and democracy, but it is too often power and wealth that propels U.S. actions here and around the world. George Floyd and Breonna Taylor are just two of the most recent victims of the systemic racism which continues to flow out of our national shadow. Breonna's executioners, acting on a no-knock warrant, looking for someone apparently already in custody, may not even be charged, much less convicted, for shooting her 8 times, killing her where she had been sleeping. During my lifetime, there have been far too many persons of color and LGBTQ persons killed for no reason. Too often, I have felt powerless and hopeless. Now my health keeps me from engaging more actively in the demonstrations, but I do support them. I don't know if this will be the time that pushes the United States to actually live up to its ideals. I have been disappointed so many times before. But I hope that real change will come this time. We need to grow up as a nation and face our shadows, the extermination of indigenous peoples, slavery, ongoing white supremacy-fired racism. I can't even imagine what our nation will look like when it really comes to terms with its failures. I hope that it will be a home that welcomes all people, with health care for all, with education for all, with justice, respect, and acceptance for all. I don't think abolishing the police would work, but they certainly need retraining and to embody respect for every person. I truly believe that all persons matter, but at this moment, it is blacks that remain the favorite target of too many racists on and off police forces. I support the movement and declare that Black lives matter, as I hope that everyone will understand that a nation that allows any group to suffer so much for so long is deeply flawed. The two afflictions of this moment, COVID-19 and racism, make this one of the most challenging years most of us have faced. I wish that we could look forward to a vaccine for each of them. One is taking more lives than any recent disease. The other continues to take lives here and there with about as much sense as the other. Vaccines and treatments for COVID-19 will come within a year or two, but racism has already been around this country for hundreds of years and will be far more difficult to eradicate. A rational democracy could make progress on both afflictions, but our current representative democracy is far from representing the majority of the people, especially people of color. When I was younger, I thought that I might help to bend the arc of justice to include and accept all the people. As I approach retirement, I just hope that younger generations will make greater progress in crafting the changes that will bring our nation closer to the ideals upon which it was founded. We have a long way to go until that happens. So for now, remember that Black lives matter. And keep your camera ready when you see a traffic stop or police acting badly at a demonstration, because we need to bring that kind of racism into the light of day. Not all police are bad, of course. It is only a few. But it will take all of us to fix the racism that's woven throughout the fabric of our nation and bring it to the light of day. It will take all of us to fix the racism in our country. Perhaps younger generations are ready to take the lead. I hope so. Be safe, my friends. Keep others safe as well. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
As we leave this time we have shared together, I invite you to virtually join hands with all those that are part of this congregation and all those that you wish to invite to this congregation. May this congregation be always dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears. And above all, may love make you strong. Amen. Go in peace. Stay safe.